Well, hello everybody. Please excuse my terrible video quality and sound quality. I usually don't do this, but since I had myself quite some issues setting up the Japanese input method on LinuxMint, not saying there's nothing wrong with LinuxMint, it's just compared to Windows it's tiny bit more tricky. So I would like to help anybody who has also had issues with this. So let's get right to it. This is a virtual machine with an absolutely fresh Windows with an absolutely fresh LinuxMint install, 19 to be exact. Let's have a look at the specifics just to make sure. It takes a while, my computer's not the quickest, but just to show you, this is LinuxMint 19, the Cinnamon version is then the Linux kernel version. But I assume you're watching this maybe much later. I hope this can still be useful to you. So I made a few notes. So let me copy this in. So these are my notes. As I said, new Mint version, fresh install. How it works in Windows and Linux. So the thing is, when I set up my Japanese input on my company PC at my job, I was actually surprised how easy it is. You literally just go to the keyboard settings, you add Japanese, and that's it. And when you switch from your local keyboard, may it be English or whatever, and you switch to Japanese, the input method, if you can call it like that, immediately switches towards the one that Windows is using, and that's it, and it works. And when you switch back, the input method like switches off, and you're back in your previous input. I actually saw the same recommendation on an Ubuntu system. So when we look up keyboards, I saw a shortcut somewhere in some, not shortcut, a screenshot somewhere in some forum that says go here and add Japanese here. And although you can do that, this is unfortunately not the right method. Here you have Japanese, but I can assure you that using this would give you only the, how to call it, this is how a Japanese keyboard looks like. So if you would write with this, nothing would change much. This actually brings me to one of the first points, that now that we have two different keyboards here, we suddenly got this little icon here where we could now switch between the keyboards. If there's only one, this is gone. So I might get back to this, how this setup might be different if you're using several keyboards, or what your possibilities are. But to keep this simple, let's assume we are using just one keyboard layout, one main one, and we just want to switch to Japanese from time to time. How do we do that? Now, okay, I already wanted to go to the setup, but let's quickly Explain the terms. Keyboard layout, input method. Okay, so what we just saw was the keyboard layout. We actually just saw how the layout would look for the Japanese keyboard. So that's the layout, that's the icon here for the keyboard. Input method, on the other hand, is the small little funny tool that helps us to write in some exotic languages that our normal keyboard doesn't let us know. So even Japanese people write like this, right? They hit 2 letters and they get some kanji from that. Even though the kanji is not directly on the keyboard. Many people who are absolutely new to this are thinking that Japanese people have like kanji directly on their keyboards. It's not, well, but that's not exactly how it is. So the input methods used for Japanese inputs are either like Fcitx. Somewhere I read it should be pronounced Fcitx. Not sure, let's call it Fcitx. And ibus. On LinuxMint 18, I was actually using ibus because I had problems setting up Fcitx. Fcitx seems to be recommended, but it didn't work for me on 18. But back then I didn't know about this one trick that I'll show later about the disabling the panel and the auto start. Back then I didn't know that, so maybe it would have worked. So let's not lose too much time. Current keyboard, we saw it. I installed this with English, and notable that the language settings, we're doing this in the language settings, but what some people might assume is that this language, this language, it might play role, or like people might think that they need to install language support here or something. And that's not the case. This is absolutely unrelated, not necessary to worry about. By the way, yeah, I'm recording this from Czech Republic. My keyboard is usually a Czech one, but for the purposes of this video I just left it English, but it really doesn't matter. The main keyboard now is English. So, input method. This is the big thing. So, install Japanese, the Japanese packages. What I mean by that is this. Input method, Japanese, install, and here we can see all the funny, nice, friendly, helpful packages. As you can see, there's not only Fcitx but also ibus and some other ones. So we just click this. It will install these packages. Also notable, we absolutely don't need any terminal during this whole process. This is one of the beautiful things about LinuxMint in general. It's usually it's very newbie friendly. I have to agree, this specific setup is not the most user friendly one, but in general it is possible to avoid the terminal. So we will give this a moment. It's still, as I said, an old machine, and I'm recording at the same time, and so on. We will continue here. We will tell, okay, you can install this, please. So what this does is it gives us the possibility in a moment to use this input method here, and we'll be able to select here either ibus or Fcitx. My recommendation is the Fcitx. That's what I'm using and what seems to be a little bit more frequently updated. seems to be a bit more frequently used. Yep, I'm actually already speaking about this point. Set input method. I think we will have to be just a little bit patient. Set input method. We'll do that in a moment. Yeah, that's then basically it. We will disable that thing, re-log in, and yep, and that's it. And then speak about some problems around that can arise sometimes. That's another beautiful thing about LinuxMint. You don't need to reboot your system every time you make some bigger change like this. Usually, or very often, it's okay to just re-log in. Real reboot is necessary usually with just some like kernel things. And even then, it's not absolutely necessary. You can just wait for the next day to just switch on your PC anew. Well, I have to say that this is a little bit slow, but as I'm very new to these videos, to be honest, this will be my first video upload, first time playing around a bit with OBS, but it's not as difficult as I thought. Just bear with me with the low quality and everything. Oh yeah, and also, if I would be a bit more experienced, I would just go to KDN Live and cut this part, but you know, I don't have it even installed. I'm not really into all this editing stuff. I wanna just do this in one go. And to be honest, I didn't expect this to take so long, but well. I actually like to watch this sometimes, these install processes. Well, that's it. Now, previously when I first found this setup, I read somewhere that you should go out of this whole setting and then back in, and then you can change this. As you can see on Mint 19, there is no issue. You can immediately select the input method. So we're gonna do this, Fcitx, and this is it. This should give us now, after the next login, a panel here. But now this is the issue. This is the small magical thing why this video is maybe necessary, because if you don't disable this small ugly little thing, you will not get it here. Actually, let's try this. Let's try this right now. Close without saving. Let's log out and log back in, and I would assume it's not gonna be there. It's not very often for me to try that, but I can almost assure you so our small test system with our small test password. it's probably not gonna be there, and that's really one of the frustrating things about this setup, because if this would just work, I would love it, but unfortunately it doesn't. And the way how I found this little trick, startup application, we actually, to be honest, we just see here Mozc, and the other thing, well, this is the how to call it, yeah, I should have maybe spoken about it before, because the input method, that's the Fcitx, but this Mozc, that's basically the, to be honest, I'm not really sure, but it's the thing that behaves like the keyboard that the input method's using. For example, with that input method, with Fcitx, you can also use it for Chinese or something else, and then you wouldn't use Mozc, but something for Chinese. So, startup applications, and here we will see this panel. So the reason why this panel exists, it was, as with all terrible results, it was a good intention. This little panel should create, and I actually saw it before on Mint 18, it creates this like an icon in the over here that looks like this penguin, and to be honest, the only big change to the classical one we will now get is that it's changing icons with a penguin, which I find more annoying than the classical one. You know, I actually don't enjoy writing around or using my system, and all the time a penguin is appearing and disappearing based on me being or not being in a text field somewhere. I hated that, so I was trying to switch that off, and I was able to switch that off, and by disabling this thing. So when now in Mint 19, with this enabled, it does not even show up. But fortunately, I didn't even want to have it there, and that's how I realized that that having this switched off enables the thing. Basically, like, solves the issue with this panel that for some reason doesn't load properly. So log out. Test. So I really hope that this is gonna be there now, or I'm gonna be terribly embarrassed. And you would not see that because I would not put that online. But it is there in our beautiful classical form. This is it. So this is the input method. Now, to explain a little bit. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but basically, when you're using the Windows, you're just putting it into the keyboard, and you just switch the keyboard to Japanese, and that's it. You don't mess around with anything else. Here, you now basically are using this input method always. So now, it's basically, the system is now basically running on this input method. You can configure it. Let's get back our, and it's English, that's why if I would write now something, I would write in English, so, you know, that's it basically. The problems start to, or not problems, but the potential confusions start to appear when you're using several input methods here, that you can add here, with several keyboards that you could have by the side, and you would have two icons, and it can work, but it can be confusing. So my absolute recommendation, if you're setting this up on a new system, just have just one keyboard, as I have now the English one. You can imagine it like hidden here because it's the only keyboard, and the other languages or input methods or anything you can have here. I said input methods, but this whole thing is just basically one input method. Let's get back our nodes just to feel more on track. Expand. Copy to clipboard, paste, and there we are. So we relogged in and everything works. This is another step that is not very intuitive for people who are trying to set this up themselves. Here you have now only English. You can see the set of the input methods also here. Here you could like change it manually, but there is no Japanese. Where do we get the Japanese? We have to, hello, please, yes, we have to click here. And in here we search for the Mozc thing. And you will not find it unless, freaking English keyboard, we will not find it unless we tick off this show only current languages. So as you see, there are already so many steps where this process could have gone wrong for a newcomer that I feel sorry, but well, this is it. So here we select it, it says Japanese, and okay, it gets now added, and this is it. Now we could test it, and basically now we're done. Actually, I should be able to, yeah. So now I would write still in English, still English, and I would switch to Japanese by hitting, in this case, ctrl+space. I do ctrl+space, and voila, the icon here changed. So now I can see that I will be writing in Japanese, and I can write Subarashi desho Japanese. It's beautiful. What I do in this situation, I prefer dark themes usually, so let me tell you, this is the best one. This now looks a little bit more pretty, and this one looks a little bit, sometimes gets stuck. Everything works, so yeah, I wanted to show that it's this menu, you know, dark also. And if we want to go switch back, we hit again ctrl+space in this case. I change it back, and I'm in full English. This would be the basics. What I absolutely need in my case is get rid of these common, now like default shortcuts, because I simply don't think ctrl+space is like the most. First of all, if you come from Windows, you want it to be Alt-Shift, and ctrl+space is used in, for example, in some other applications that I use, so I don't like this. I changed this to Alt-Shift. Voila, and this should work. Now it changes and back, and that's it. And the other one, control, and this, what is it? You know, I'm not a native English speaker. I knew it, but I forgot it. It doesn't matter. It's to do with these add-ons. So a thing that you can use here now, after having this input method, you can use control and this sign. Wait, it doesn't work. Maybe it doesn't work. Wait a moment. I can do Control X. Well, I'm not gonna cut this out, but I'm gonna tell you what this is about. This is about the clipboard. I'm stupid. It's the first one. So yes, this is the thing. So I'm a bit surprised that it doesn't work right now. Oh, okay, I'm stupid. I was hitting the wrong key because usually I use the check keyboard, and this is where the sign usually is. So just for the sake of showing it, it lets you just simply select from a set of clipboards that you used. All the clipboards that you made. It's like story in class 5, and you could use them. I could like hit 2 now, and voila, you know. So it's okay, but I just simply don't want to have it on this particular shortcut. I usually put it here, for example, but. Or you can just switch. Well, you can maybe switch it off. I'm actually not 100% sure how you switch it off. Maybe you just don't have anything here. I will let you decide that. It's just an add-on. It's not that important. What's important is the Japanese input. So let's continue. So those are the shortcuts. Now we fixed both of them. I can use now these both for the things that I need to. And most settings and 2 ways how to get in. Yes, so one way how to get in is through here. No, wait, this is not the right way. How do you get in? Well, one way is definitely through here. Configure current input method. It can't be true. Because now I'm in English, so what does open? Nothing opens, yeah. No, okay, this one opens. This way we don't get the... I guess there's just one way that I would use. I'll get back to these ones. You have to switch into it. Alt Shift. Right, so you have to be in the text field. Oh, that's a bit annoying. So you have to be in the text field, then you can switch into it, and then you can do configuration tool. And you get to the most settings. How to set these things and what all they mean, it would be a thing for a separate video. I won't do that. I will leave this up to you. Honestly, I had never issues with this thing, and I don't recommend very much to fiddle around with it too much. Or if you're familiar with it, I mean, this is a thing that can be, this one. This is a thing that can be very useful when you need to put some specific things here. Like how the tool should behave. Like for example, when I want to write in katakana, so I think F6 and F7. Yeah, F6, when you do F6, it gets into hiragana. F7, it gets into katakana. And why this is how it is, I think we could find it somewhere here. Yeah, here, F6, F7. During the conversion, during the conversion phase, that was where we were in. If you hit this happens. So you can customize this to your heart's content. we want to do it now. Just to show you how you get into those settings. Actually, I thought I could get in through here too, but somehow, no, doesn't matter. So this is it. The rest would be more or less just the tips. They're incredibly useful too. So, how to reset the settings if something happens. For example, for me, for some reason, it happened recently. After a few months, I didn't use this, and suddenly when I wanted to use it, I switched into it, I started typing, and the words didn't appear in the text line, but they were appearing here in the dark bar, you know, here in the input method. That's where it was writing. Like, I mean, it was still functional, but that's not what I want, you know, that's not what I was used to, that's not what most people are used to. It took a while till I found a solution, and it's not a very satisfactory one, but not a very satisfying one, but you can basically just delete the folder that's holding the settings, and with the next logout login it gets regenerated again, and that's it, you know. So it's in config Fcitx in your home system. So it has, I do ctrl+H, right? I do into config here, and here it should be under Fcitx. If this opens one day, hi, this one. So this one we can ignore. There's not much in anymore anyway, and this one, it's not tiny, well, it's not big either, but I can tell you, you can just delete it, log in, like log out, log back in, and it's gonna be there again. You will have to set up everything again, you will have to put in like this thing again and just change your shortcuts, but everything's gonna work. No, that's the main thing. So that's the one thing. Notice add-ons. I actually already spoke about the add-ons, and now the difficult part. I'm actually making it too dramatic. It's not that dramatic. And actually this is switching there and back because where to start? So for me, you know, if I would use more languages here, I would be adding them here and not into the keyboards. I recommend you to leave in the keyboards, and when I say keyboards I mean this thing, to leave in the keyboards only just one, and to not use any like crazy shortcuts for the keyboards, because what happens is when you, for example, I wanna use, let's say, German. The thing is, if I would add German here, I would get the other icon. So you can safely do that, you know, you can have both icons at the same time, but I simply don't like it, you know. While if you put it here, you still have just your one icon, and you switch through these input methods. The thing is, if you can have languages in both, in the keyboards and in the input methods, and it works surprisingly well, you can still use shortcuts for switching keyboards, like switch to another layout. You can do, for example, what was I using? Alt Control, for example. Okay, and so this is now for switching keyboards. I will leave just this one keyboard here, and I will add German here. Now keep in mind you have to start with a big letter. if you would write German, you wouldn't find it. You have to write German. Case sensitive, as we know. And see, we don't have anything else here, but we still can use it. And I find this nice. I'm not using it myself because I don't need to. I have just my Czech keyboard, and if I need to write English, I write it with my Czech keyboard. There's no issue. Even German letters, you know, like I just use just one keyboard. But for people who are switching between other keyboards, this is how I will recommend it. Put it in here, and when you need to switch, now comes the thing where you have to start to use your imagination, because this input method is using the first keyboard that's here as the, let's say, default one, and everything else is used within the input method into which you switch. You basically activate the input method with this shortcut, and you scroll through the rest through this shortcut. So now I should be writing in Japanese, right? So I'm writing in Japanese, and now if I hit Ctrl+Shift, I switch to German. Beautiful. I even got the flag here. If you don't like this, the flags popping in, you can simply just remove it through, I mean, you can literally just remove it like this, or if you need to put it back in again, you do it in, I think, right, at Applets to panel, and there it should be under keyboards. See how it's always changing? I would like that. No. Wait, it should be here, right? Keyboard. Hi, keyboard. I'm still saying hi. I was recently in Japan for a longer time. So yeah, you could just take this out or put it back in. I don't have it in, I have it out. Well, actually, maybe I have it in, but it's never popping up because I use only one keyboard. And when I switch to Japanese, it's still using the default one, and that's something that I didn't emphasize yet enough. So let me tell you. The keyboard that the Japanese input method is using will always be the one that's here as the main one. That's because here it says default. Input method default, and the input method default will always be the one that's on the top. If I would put German there, this would take the default one, so it would be the German one, and the German letters would be basically translated into that. So let's see. I put it like this. See, it took a tiny bit more because it did something in the background, and now if I switch to wait, so now I'm out, you know, now I'm out of the input method, and it's using, obviously it seems German because I have it on top, so I would write now in German, and if I switch into the input method, I have English. That's interesting, maybe because it's the second here. Anyway, I can scroll, right? Wait, no, I'm out again. So now I'm in English, and Ctrl+Shift, I'm in Japanese. Ctrl+Shift, I'm in English, Japanese and English. You know, it's scrolling just through the ones that are not in the first place. And if I write in Japanese now, it should be using the German keyboard. So here, yeah, and it's using the J. So this would be this should be Z, yeah, because you know here on top you have T, Z. No, like QWERTY, so quartz. So Germans and Czechs, they have on the top Q, W, E, R, T, and there's a Z. So it's using a German keyboard. It's actually better to see like just here. But it's still like translating to Japanese, you know, so this is how you can use that. If you would want to combine it even more, where you just want to use English as the main one, but for some reason, for some crazy reason, you want that your English, that your Japanese input is going to be using a different keyboard. Actually, maybe the Japanese keyboard, which is not that crazy. You would set it up here. Instead of default, you would just pick up the one you would want. I think that should be all. I didn't go into the complications with having this together with keyboards here, but I can do that. I actually can also show you. We set up here before a Ctrl+Alt shortcut that should scroll through the keyboards, right? The amazing thing is, even though I put the keyboard into this input method and it's not here, it will still be picked up. So when I'm now in like, and it doesn't matter if you're in the input method or out, like now I'm in the input method. If I go out from it without shift, yeah, I'm out. Even now I can scroll through it, right? So theoretically there should be German if I click Ctrl+Alt. Maybe that's not how it works. You know, these are things that can get confusing. So maybe you have to be in the input method. Like if I go into now Japanese, like of course I can now scroll between German and Japanese with Ctrl+Shift, you know, through the methods, but Ctrl+Alt, no, Ctrl+Alt doesn't work. So I guess I would really have to, I will go out again. I would really have to put it in here. So let's say I would put here check. Like this is something that in a way I don't recommend. But you could have that, right? So yeah, I could scroll now between Czech and English because those are the keyboards set up here, I guess. Or maybe it's because it's Czech here and English here in the first place, you know? Like these things can easily get crazy, like unintuitive, you know? You know, so now it doesn't even pick up like Ctrl+Alt. When I'm in the input method, Ctrl+Alt also doesn't work. When I go out, Ctrl+Alt doesn't work. It just doesn't work anymore. So I couldn't get to check, it's weird. So, as I say, I don't recommend having several languages both here and here. Like, before I was testing it and it was taking Czech even though it looked very similar like this. Let me tell you, have everything just on one place, you know, and either scroll through your keyboard shortcut here and go into Japanese sometimes here, or have everything here, and I would just recommend that option. You know, it doesn't sound intuitive, but I'm telling you, it's probably better to have just... Now this is the difference. If you would have a lot of languages here and only Japanese here, you would always have to have both icons. The one icon that shows you on which keyboard you are, and then the icon for controlling the input method when you switch into Japanese. I don't like that, so that's why I don't have it, but maybe it doesn't matter to you. Maybe you just want to have both, but I prefer to have it like this. It's more clean, you know, it always looks the same, nothing is like crazy, and the only time when it switches is when I go into Japanese, which for me is like, you know, rarely, but when I need to, I have it. Thank you for your patience with this video. I hope it was helpful to you, and bye bye.